Over the next few minutes, I want to share with you the SecureGive story. It's a story about finding a need and filling it. It's a story about finding a problem and solving it. But more than that, it's a story of faith. In 1987, my wife Patty and I planted what would become known as Stevens Creek Church in Augusta, Georgia. Just a few years before, we were living on food stamps and in government-assisted housing. And now we're leading this small church. We didn't know it took money to do ministry, but we did have something. We had the call of God, the prompting of the Lord on our lives. Through the years, the church began to grow very slowly and very steadily. By 2003, we'd been in 5 different locations: the home, a hotel, a church building, a school building, and then we had completed our first phase on our land. We were dreaming of the second phase. We knew that we needed help, so we enlisted the help of a stewardship company, and they came to lead us through a capital campaign. During this time, that consultant challenged me, said, "Marty, I want you to search your heart and see what God would have you to do as you lead the congregation through this." Culture was changing during that time. They were moving away from cash and moving toward electronic payments. But it was just starting. I started looking in my own life and I realized that I didn't carry cash and I didn't carry a checkbook, but I lived with a debit card in my hand. And I started wondering, I wonder if there are other people in my congregation like me. What would happen if God prompted them to give? How would they give? That thought led me to search out for a bank card giving solution for the local church. I called software companies, I called church stewardship companies, I called bookstores, I called banks. It seems like with every conversation I had the same response: a bank card donation system for the church. Now that's an interesting idea, but we don't do that. On June the 6th, 2004, at 5:45 in the morning, the Lord woke me up and said, "Marty, I've called you to do this. You walk through the doors that I will open." Over the next few months, I put together a team of developers, and in March of 2005, we launched the nation's first giving kiosk at Stevens Creek Church. What we discovered is in the first 90 days, 27% of the people who donated on the kiosk had never given to the church before. When I saw those numbers, I knew that it had an impact on our local church, but I also realized that this technology was going to impact the church at large. Over the next several months, God opened doors for us to put giving kiosks in local churches, and many of them had the same results as we did. We knew that God was doing something bigger than we first imagined. About 18 months into this, I received a call one afternoon, and my assistant told me, said, "Marty, tonight at church, there's going to be a reporter from the Los Angeles Times." I hung up from that call and I told my wife, I said, "Patty," I said, "our lives just changed." And sure enough, the Los Angeles Times sent a reporter, and he was so unchurched. But he walked into the doors of our congregation that Wednesday evening and he sensed the presence of the Lord. But it moved him to the point where after service, he came up to me and said, "Marty," said, "I'm going to put you on the front page of the LA Times." And sure enough, 6 weeks after that, the front page of the LA Times had these words: "ATM for Jesus." That morning, that newspaper hit the stands. I was on Good Morning LA. Shortly after that, I was on the Today Show. I was on CBS Good Morning. I was on CNN. I was on Fox News. We were a couple of years into this adventure when I attended a conference at a church in Louisiana. Pastor Tommy Barnett was speaking. And at the end of that service, he challenged everyone. He said, "If you want this multiplication anointing, come forward." I'm telling you, I ran to the front of that church. I just wanted everything that God has for me. We made it to the front of the church. There were so many people wanting prayer. He said, "I need you to come up on stage." I was on the stage and I was saying, "God, whatever you have for me, I want it." And Tommy Barnett prayed over me, and I started to see at that point, God started to multiply our efforts. If you were to look at the history of SecureGive, you would see from that point to the next 3 years, God opened doors supernaturally for us to help churches along the way. God's going to challenge you. He's going to challenge you to step through the doors that He's opening. And I just want to encourage you to do that, because God has people in your path that's going to help you do what God's called you to do. And we believe that your church can be fully funded. And SecureGive can provide the technology to help you reach those goals that God's placed in your heart.